We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
You got to have the why, and we know our why. So
you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people have done this already. You can get help. You can get a roadmap. You can save a lot of time, money, and frustration. Welcome to the Value Add Podcast with K&K. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Value Add Podcast with K&K. Today we have a very cool interview with Brad Sumrok. And if you guys don't know who he is, I was actually kind of surprised I didn't know who he was. We were initially introduced to him through a friend, actually Moncy's boyfriend, who knows him, and I just started diving in and learning a little bit about him, and I was like, wow, we really need to know this guy. He's super smart, super intelligent. He's friends with Tom Wheelwright, who we just had on the podcast as well. He uses him for his taxes and tax advice and all of that, but he's a super interesting guy. So Ken, do you want to give a quick background on who Brad is?
Yeah, so Brad is basically he was just a normal W-2 guy, sales rep, said, I really don't want to do this, started buying multifamily in 2002, really took off, and I believe it's 2012, he decided, man, I should start educating people since I bought real estate and did all this. So Brad's a syndicator, plus he owns stuff by himself. And on top of that, Brad is, he's been on stage with Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, people like that. He knows them. He's been on like Old Capital Podcast, Big Pockets. He kind of knows a lot of people in that space, which Crystal and I know. The way that I heard about Brad was, I couldn't remember if it's on Robert Kiyosaki's podcast or Tom Wheelwright, Tax Free Wealth right here, is this guy comes on, Brad, and he's like, I had this problem. I was going around on stage and I was telling people, I'm super successful because I paid $1 million in taxes last year, and he thought that was success. And Tom Wheelwright basically told him that you're kind of not successful, you're an idiot to say that, because successful people and smart people would pay zero tax. He goes, well, that's impossible. I'm making $4 to $5 million. Well, Crystal and I on camera, he basically told us that he publicly makes about $4 or $5 million, not to brag, but he wanted to also tell you that he pays anywhere from $0 to $100,000 in tax.
Legally, too.
So
we're not breaking the law.
We're going to repeat that. He didn't make $400,000 or $500,000 and pay $0 or $100,000, which still would be really low. He made $4 to $5 million paying $0 to $100,000 in tax.
And he's doing it all legally.
Exactly. So
within the tax law.
So Brad is obviously, he's a speaker. I don't know if he has a book. Yeah, he has a whole course. So Brad teaches people how to invest in multifamily. He coaches you. He walks you through the whole thing. He's probably got one of the best courses out there. So it was cool at this time to jump on a Zoom call. He's located in Dallas, and jump right into it, to the thick of where we are with the coronavirus and what he's doing and what he's not doing and what he's seeing and what his out view is of the market. But anyways, there's some really good nuggets here, and honestly, like, one of the things that, like I said, that's drawn to me is not only is he making money from real estate, but he's also making money from his webinar, seminar, and his classes, and how he's basically you got to learn how he's paying zero tax. So
I think also one of the things that really attracted me about Brad too, I know Kenny loves to push the $0 in taxes thing, because I think if we're all doing the right homework and we're educating ourselves and we're being enough of an advocate for ourselves and our own financial well-being, we could get to the point where we're paying little to no tax legally. But the thing I love about Brad is that he was just a regular guy like us. So working hard, making a decent income, doing all those things, and he was able to, from 2002 to 2012, really kick it into high gear. And he owns a lot of properties. He's partnered with a lot of people. And then now he wants to teach that to other people. So the one thing he says he does is that he only teaches what he knows. So he can teach you to syndicate if that's what you want. He can teach you how to buy your own deals if that's what you want. You can hire him as a coach to help you walk through deals. You can also hire him as a coach, and he can even potentially invest in deals with you or bring other investors into your deals. So knowing that Brad's overseeing your deal, or has at least looked at it and guided you through, and you're using all of his principles. So there's a lot of really cool things. I think he's just one of the most interesting and dynamic educators and investors out there, and we could all certainly learn a few things from him as aspiring investors ourselves. So.
And just a quick note, when we filmed this, Crystal and I were busy getting the vacation room together. We've been taking advantage of basically it being vacant and doing this back unit. So I brought the laptop to the property thinking, oh, what if we don't make it back? Well, we didn't make it back. So we literally were like in the middle of running around, hustling and bustling. Obviously, we have a brand new baby, and then we have Harlow. And so we're like, what are we going to do? So we actually shot it in La Jolla Shores. So thank you to Zoom, thank you to technology, just to prove the point that you don't need to be in a studio. You can do this stuff literally anywhere while you're doing anything, and we prove that. So without further ado, Brad, let's jump into it.
I was like, did you guys do that at your house, or is that yeah?
No, we're just over here working. I brought the laptop. I'm like, I can do this anywhere.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is my view. That's Dallas, downtown Dallas, right there.
Wow.
I love Dallas. Dallas is so much fun. I love Pecan Lodge. That's what I love.
Oh, you're in Dallas. Wow, there's a lot going on there. Woo. Crazy.
All right, you guys. I'll let you guys go. Have a great meeting.
Thanks.
Chat soon. Bye.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Hey, Brad, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your time.
Sure, I'm happy to be on.
Yeah. So I actually just to start, I actually was talking to probably a person that you really love yesterday that saves you a lot of money in taxes.
Yeah.
Tom Wheelwright.
Wheelwright?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
talking to him yesterday.
He's a good friend of mine. He's my accountant.
Yep.
He
So
gives a lot of good advice. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he's helped me save a lot of money. When I met him, I was speaking at like a real estate guy's syndication event, and I was telling him how I paid $935,000 in taxes, and I want to get up to $1 million because that's the sign of so successful, right? And then he was like, I don't ever want you to say that again, and I'm going to teach you how to avoid this. So I became one of his clients, and in 2018, I paid zero.
that's amazing. Yeah. We kind of found Tom on a podcast, and we were paying a lot of taxes, and I was like, gosh, we do financing. I do commercial financing. And I'm like, why is it that all my clients that own all these apartments aren't paying any taxes, and they make a heck of a lot more money than I do, and I'm paying all this money in taxes? So we got connected with Tom's company, and we paid a lot less taxes last year for sure.
close to that.
Hopefully we're on our way to zero this year. So
Yeah.
Good.
So
Yeah, that's
for
awesome.
I mean, obviously we know who you are, but for anybody that's going to watch this that doesn't know who you are, can you kind of just give a quick summary of who you are and like how you got here today, where you are when we talk in 2012 and we're quarantined? 2020, I mean.
All right. Well, my background, it's one of the reasons I resonate so much with Robert Kiyosaki is that I was an engineer with an MBA and was in the corporate world and wanted to climb up the corporate ladder and never quite got where I wanted to go, and got fired once and got laid off once. And I was told like my expectations were unrealistic. Like, you're too young to think that you should be able to earn that much money type of thing. Right. So, actually went from engineering to sales because I knew a lot of these salespeople and, technology sales and IT sales, and they were making like, this was back in the 90s, they were making like 6 figures and I was making 5 figures. And I was like, so I got into sales positions and I liked it. I was doing a lot of travel. It was more in line with my personality, but I sold the third biggest deal in company history and got a $198,000 commission check. And then 6 months later, I got fired. Not laid off, I got fired because I had no pipeline, and which means like I had nothing in the future that I was forecasting. And it was like, Brad, sorry, we're paying you a salary and you pulled in all this revenue for us last year, but you've done nothing in 6 months and you have nothing in your forecast for the next 3 or 4 months. So we're going to let you go. Wow. And that was like a wake up call for me. So I actually thought about going to law school, started studying for the LSAT. And that's when I picked up in 2001, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, and then the Cash Flow Quadrant. And for the first time ever, I learned about ESBI. And at that point, I decided I wanted to be a business owner and an investor. And that's why I went into apartments instead of like single family homes, because if I could do an apartment building and have a manager and a maintenance person and a management company and have enough units to have that scale, then I could skip over doing all the small stuff. So that's how I started. My first deal was a 32 unit building. I never did a single family rental. I never flipped a house. I went right in from 0 to 32 units.
Wow, that's awesome. So, where are you at currently today? Like, what's your portfolio kind of, and where do you own?
Yeah. So, right here in this quarantine of 2020, I've been a general partner in as many as 5,300 units. My model is to buy, hold, and sell. And so right now I'm in about 2,700 units. And in many of those, I'm the general partner, but in a few of them, I own 100% or just with one other minority partner. Like, for an example, I have a 120 unit building, another 124 unit building. And these are the ones that I bought myself because I was paying too much on taxes. Like we were talking about, I didn't know that we had started already, but I was paying all this money in taxes. And then my accountant was like, well, the way you're going to save on taxes if you have more direct ownership. So as a general partner, I own like 5, 10, 15% of these deals. So I'm only getting that part of the depreciation. But as my income continues to grow with not only my apartments, but we have like the number one, what I believe to be the number one seminar and education company for apartment investors in the country. And that's a profitable business. So I have all this earned income that I need depreciation to offset. So yeah, right now I'm in roughly 2,700 units, and about 300 I own direct, and the other ones I'm managing member in. So
Wow.
I'm
Awesome.
always looking to buy, and I'm always looking to sell at the right times. So that's where I'm at. And then of course in 2013 we started our event and mentoring and education company that just kind of started as a dream in 2013. And now I would say arguably, in my opinion, we have the biggest and the best multifamily mentoring and education company in the country.
Wow, that's awesome.
So is your program, is it basically to help people to syndicate, or is it kind of depending on what their goals are for themselves individually?
Yes. Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay, so if
yeah.
you're like, I just want to own, we have different philosophies too that just work for us. So for example, people will say, "Are you guys taking investments?" And I'm like, I don't. We had a property management company. I kind of just want to do things my way, and I don't want to have to answer to other people. So if you want to just be that person and own apartments on your own, your program can help you work towards that. Or if you want to syndicate and raise money to grow faster, I guess.
Yeah, and here's how I will answer that, is that it's whatever I've done, I teach, and what I haven't done, I don't teach. So I'm not teaching theory. So like, for example, I do have a CCIM, which is Certified Commercial Investment Member, and I do understand, development and lease ups and office and retail and student housing. But if you want me to hold your hand and mentor you on any of those things, I'm not going to do it because I haven't done it myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
So what I've done myself and what I help other people do is I'm a syndicator, I'm an individual owner, and I'm a passive investor. So our program is really a reflection of the types of investing that I do. So if anyone wants to, and my passion is education, okay? So if you want to be a more like educated passive investor, like how do I decide which deals to invest in? Or a syndicator gave me an offering package, and how do I vet the deal? And how do I vet the sponsor? Well, I help you with that. If you want to go out and buy a 10 unit building or a 20 unit building or a 30 unit building like I did, I could help you with that because I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to syndicate a 300 unit building, I could help you do that too, because I've done it and I have a track record of helping, hundreds of other people. So that's really what I do, and I teach. And like right now, some of the deals that I'm in, I'm the direct owner with me and my wife, and some I'm the syndicator, and there's a few that I'm a passive investor in. So that's again, it's just staying consistent with doing what I teach and teaching what I do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. So are you spending most of your time, like obviously today is probably not, nobody's really doing much right now, we're all quarantined, but when life's normal, are you spending most of your time on the teaching or, going out and prospecting and trying to find deals?
Well, my passion is mentoring and teaching. So the way I've set up my deal activity is I end up partnering as like a co-syndicator or a co-general partner. So for example, a lot of times if it might be with one of my experienced students that I've, mentored for 5 or 6 years, and then they go out and find a deal and they want me to be a part of it because I have a huge investor database and I can play a role on the management team. So I get into deals like that because I don't want to be the day-to-day, in a syndicator group, you need to have a manager or an asset manager. I don't want to be the asset manager. I can be, and I've done that role and I'm qualified to do it. It's just not I don't get juiced about it, right? So I love doing deals because of the financial benefits, obviously, that I get for me and my wife and all the investors get. And also I love being involved in uplifting communities because we're focused on working class workforce housing, B and C class. So I love to be able to go in and uplift the quality of life for working class people. But even more, I love doing an event with 600 or 700 people and changing their mindset from, people come to our events thinking they're going to learn how to do an eightplex and they leave learning how to do an 80-unit building. So I love that.
That's really cool. And I can tell you, even just working with people who are trying to get into the business or buying buildings, talking to me about financing, it's like, I hear all the time, hey, would you be willing to go in on the deal with me too? Just because I know you have expertise, you know what you're doing, and people get that extra confidence being able to work with you and have you as a partner. It's like so nice to be able to have that. You're invested too. So you have an interest in making sure that the investment goes well. That's a really cool kind of structure that you have.
Yeah, and it's fun. And I could also say, like right now, like what I've been doing in the past month, where we've been pretty much in a lockdown, is making sure my assets are, knowing my numbers, doing the stress tests, working with my co-syndicators. And we've stress tested all our deals. We've modeled 20-30% decreases in collections, 10% increases in expenses, because people are going to be using more water right now than they were because everybody's at home and collections are going down and expenses are going up. So it's important to know, like, where do you stand? Do you have cash reserves? Do you have personal reserves? These forbearance agreements that are out there right now are terrible. I would not recommend, unless you're in a unique situation, these are like dead man walking agreements for the people that are doing these forbearance. And so the other thing I've been doing so much, like today's an example. I mean, I'm happy to be on the phone or on the Zoom meeting with you guys. I've been doing Zoom meetings with my students, and we have, hundreds of students. And we have students that are in a passive investor category, and then we have students that are in like a syndicator category, and we have hundreds and hundreds all over the country. And I have been a lot of what we have done prior to coronavirus has been live events and online. A lot of live stuff, a little bit of online. So 90% live, 10% online. And now it's shifted to 100% online. And so what I'm doing now is, and this is, I know you didn't ask the question, but I feel like I'm busier now than before because people need guidance, people need leadership, people need certainty, people need community, people need connection. So for anyone that's listening to this, if you're in that position, whether it's you're a head of household or a head of a company or a head of a department or have investors or have residents or, or tenants or stakeholders, now is not the time to be invisible and to really, I hate to borrow the term 10X, but to really 10X your,
yeah.
but to 10X your activity, and I find myself now, I'm on Zoom meetings with clients, brokers, stakeholders, operators. I have a mastermind, we're meeting all the time. And And because of that and the value that we're adding to the people that are in these programs, they're overwhelmed with how much we're doing. So that's just another message is I feel like now during this quarantine, it's a huge opportunity. And now the stuff we're doing online is going to be part of our regular offering going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been an opportunity. It's like, I was kind of like, man, I should do more webinars. I should do more of this. Oh, I'm too busy, right? Well, now that's our way of doing business. So
yeah, it's become a new norm. Yeah.
Yeah. So going forward, it's like, of course, now all my students want them. We do them weekly now. I used to do them every other month, a live webinar, and then we did live events. And, I did live events every month and webinars every other month. But now there's no live events, right? But I'm doing weekly 3 to 4 hour Zoom calls with hundreds of people from all over the country. And they're like, Brad, please, when things go back to normal, don't stop doing this, because now we don't have to get on an airplane and we could see each other on Zoom. And I have a Zoom account that I can have 1,000 people all together where you can see everybody.
Wow.
So it's amazing. It's phenomenal, actually. It's pretty magical what is happening right now.
It definitely shows us how much we can do without flights and hotels and all the kind of craziness that we've been doing with all the events. We've kind of been learning that ourselves too. We had planned to go to some events ourselves and we're like, okay, now it's a webinar, now it's a Zoom call. This is great. I don't have to book a flight. Let's do more.
I mean, honestly,
go ahead. Sorry.
It's more efficient. I mean, I think it's changing everything right before us like that. There wasn't even time to think. You're pivoting, and some people aren't, but we are. I have to say I thank you for doing that, because people do need people like you that's a professional. They need confidence. They need that guidance right now, because the last thing you need is people. We always say is the worst time to make a bad decision is when you're emotional or you're reacting and you're not thinking clearly, because sometimes, or a lot of times, you regret that later on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. So it's like forcing me to learn new skills. Like I just finished, before I got on with you, I did a Facebook Live, and I was on Zoom, and then we shared it on Facebook, and then I brought on people, and, and just the response that we get from that has been phenomenal. So, and it's a lot of fun too. So like we've been growing relationships with not only our clients, but found a way to add more value to the public and get even more clients now. Because look, there's going to be a buying opportunity. Like there already is. We're already seeing pricing about 10% off from the pre-coronavirus for apartment buildings. And I'm talking like all over the map. This is not specific to any geography because it could vary, but a $10 million deal in February is now probably a $9 million deal. And we're going to just see more of that in Q3 and Q4 of 2020. So like, I know people right now might be gun shy, but anyone that's ever heard, and I don't know if it's Warren Buffett or whoever it is that said, when everyone's greedy, be fearful, and everyone's fearful, be greedy.
It's Warren Buffett.
There's going to be some amazing buying opportunities, and people need to get ready, because these deals are going to go to the people that are prepared, that know what they want, they can pull the trigger. One of my friends, he's at a level like with 14,000 units, like he's like 7 times at my level. And he just got a call on a deal that was $47 million, and he's buying it for, they're losing $45,000 a door. He said their all-in price is $180 a door, and it's an A-class property. And they're able to come in and pick it up for the debt value. So they're going to do a loan assumption at equivalent to about $135,000 a door. And so the seller is losing their whole equity portion, which was, the buyers coming in at the debt.
Yeah.
Was it ground up?
Discount.
Is it new
What's
construction?
that?
Is it new construction?
It's a 2017 deal that they never fully leased up or optimized, and they've been underperforming, and now this hit, and they're desperate, and they
they're like, we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I listen to the old Capital podcast. I listen to them a lot, and they were just saying, where you live in Dallas, there's a lot of development. It's booming, a lot of development up, and they're now stuck here trying to lease up. So Where do you think you'll see? I mean, do you think it's going to be up all classes? You'll see deals, or do you think it's going to be more A, or what are you kind of thinking and seeing?
Well, my specialty has always been B and C class.
Okay.
So again, I like to talk about what I know. Others that specialize in A, that's where they're seeing the opportunity, is like the example I shared with you. A deal was built in 2017, comes online, they're doing a lease up. It's in a market, say for example, like Houston, where maybe they've had some economic challenges prior to the coronavirus. They never hit their numbers, and now boom. And so they're able to come in and get that for 70 cents on the dollar. My specialty is B and C, and we specialize in landlord and business friendly environments with above average metrics like job growth and population growth. So the markets we specialize in are like within Texas, so it'll be like Texas, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Central Florida, going from Tampa, Orlando to Jacksonville, the Phoenix and Tucson area, the Carolinas, maybe Las Vegas to some extent, and some specific markets in the Midwest like Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis. Those have been the markets where I specialize in that meet that recipe of landlord and business friendly with above average economic drivers. So what I see is, again, there's going to be people that their 10-year Fannie or Freddie loans are due. And those people that need to sell because of their loan is due. Okay. There's going to be another group that bought with 2 or 3 year bridge debt 2 or 3 years ago. And by the way, I've been telling my students, do not get a bridge loan in the last 2 or 3 years, because if your plan was to get, and bridge debt is, for people that don't know, it's short-term debt. You get higher leverage, but people that went into that type of debt 2 or 3 years ago, these loans are coming due. And there's going to be loans coming due in July and August and September. And you're not going to be able to get that permanent 10 to 12 year Fannie Mae loan right now on that deal, because valuations are down, collections are down. So these people are going to need to sell. Okay. So you're going to have, it's funny because I've been doing this since 2002, apartments. And, you know, in the single family world, they always talk about find the motivated seller, right? Find the distressed seller. And in multifamily, look, when you're buying a 60, 80, 100 unit building, even if you're a motivated seller, you're going to find a broker and you're going to put it out to the market and try to get the market value for your asset, right? And over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been such a seller's market that even motivated sellers are able to get premium pricing on their deals. But now that's not going to happen. Now you have people that need, only the people that are going to be selling right now are people that need to sell. And there's also going to be buyers that have dry powder like me, you know, and my students, and people that are ready to go. And so that's where the opportunity is. So the people that are like sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, I'm going to wait for this to bottom out and see, by the time you decide to get in, it's going to be too late. So the opportunity to, and I don't want to be self-promotional. I mean, I'm not, whether they come to me or somebody else, it doesn't make a huge difference. But I mean, they really need to be getting educated on whatever asset class they want to buy. So they got to learn the fundamentals. They want to build their teams. They want to get a group of investors ready to go and identify what and where they want to buy, because the opportunities will go fast, but you may be able to pick things up for 10 to 30% of a discount of where you were able to get it before the coronavirus. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. Do you think this will be something that's more shorter lived, the opportunities, or do you think this is going to drag on, or what do you think, just with obviously B and C, because that's what we buy too?
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a guess, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'll tell you what I think.
Sure.
By the way, I'm good friends with Paul Peebles and James Ang. They show up at all of our events here in Dallas.
I bet.
I've done a lot of my loans. I've known Paul Peebles since 2008 with Old Capital. So
that's awesome.
I could just tell you that I think that, I mean, I kind of see it as a Nike stripe or a Nike logo, where, and that's how I'm modeling my deals now, whether it's a deal I'm currently in and I'm stress testing it, I'm dropping collections down to 70% of what we were collecting pre-coronavirus. So I have drops in collections in April, about 10 to 15%, and then going down to 25 or 30% off in May and June, and then maybe back up to 20 in July, and then kind of this slow recovery by the end of the year. That's how I'm modeling my deals. And the same if it's a new acquisition, I'm modeling a drop in income and actually an increase in expenses because all the people living at home, they're spending more, they're flushing the toilet more, right? They're going to the bathroom, they're cooking, they're cleaning. I mean, I know here where I am, like, I just learned how to use the dishwasher the other day, but like my wife is like, oh my God, I've never used the dishwasher so much. Well, that takes water, right? And we're like home all the time. And we're throwing out trash like 17 times a day from all the food we're eating at home when we used to eat out like 2 meals a day. So expenses will go up a bit, revenue is going to come down, and you got to model that. So I'm modeling mine in terms of like a Nike logo shape where I see us getting back to normal end of 2020, early 2021. That's how I'm modeling it. I could be totally wrong.
I think the conservative is better though, I mean, so speaking of, how were your April collections across the board? What'd you guys see?
Yeah, and it varies. Like some of my properties literally are 100% of where we were at in March.
Yeah.
And some are 20% off. And I think it goes down to, again, like and I'm even looking at like, and I have assets in Florida and Ohio and Oklahoma, but even within DFW, this area here has a little bit better, stronger demographic profile than this area over here. And now we're seeing that in terms of collections. But here's the other thing, and we expect May to be worse than April, but all the fear mongering was going out there is like, oh, even some of my students are like, Brad, what if nobody pays the rent? They're seeing the news, there's no evictions, and what if nobody pays the rent? And I'm like, we're not going to be in a situation where nobody pays the rent. And so there's just people that are buying into all the fear out there.
Yeah, it's funny because we obviously have friends, clients, people that we work with who are, they own retail or they own office or industrial and things like that. And I think this was one of the biggest events where multifamily is actually getting affected. But we were listening to something the other day and it was so right because it's like, where is everybody stuck? They're stuck at home. At least you can still say that multifamily is a strong asset class. This is a very weird time that we're in where multifamily is actually getting affected, but it literally almost takes a pandemic or some sort of natural disaster for your buildings to, not perform at this point. So multifamily is still a strong asset class. And yes, there's going to be some rocky roads, but we're far less affected than, I have clients who have industrial properties that said none of their tenants paid the rent this month.
Yeah.
None.
Retail, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, I'm very bullish on multifamily, but I do want to say something here is like, and I see what, like I got into this in 2002, started, mentoring others in 2006, formed a company with my wife in 2012, been doing it for a while. I've been through the 2008 depression. I've owned deals. I bought deals at the top of the cycle in 2008 before things crashed. Wow. I survived those deals. I thrived. I was buying in 09 and 10 when everyone was like, oh my God, it's a terrible time to buy. And I'm like buying up stuff, So I haven't been through a coronavirus, but I have been through what we used to call the 2008 Great Depression. Maybe now maybe this will be the Great Depression. Who knows? But the thing is, I guess what I want to say is there's a lot of people that got into multifamily in the past 5 years that are now gurus, right? And they're teaching people and doing seminars and stuff. And I see a lot of their marketing and I see a lot of their comments. And some of them were like, oh, multifamily is recession proof. Well, anyone who says that has never been through a recession. Point number one. And number two, do you remember before the lockdowns when the stock market started crashing? And I saw all these people, and they're like, hey, the stock market went down 20%, but my multifamily properties haven't went down. And I was like, dude, just wait. Okay. So the reality is is that if you own an apartment now, on paper, it's worth less. It is on paper. If I had to sell my assets right now, I would get a 10 to 20% haircut. So I don't see any of those people right now saying, hey, where's, my apartments haven't been impacted, because we've all been impacted. But the other message is this, is like, now is not the time to hesitate. Now is the time to build your team and learn the fundamentals and get your investor database together, because it could be a once in a lifetime buying opportunity. I mean, it really could be. So that's what I'm preparing for. And I just shared with you a friend. I mean, he buys A-class and he's, 14,000 unit guy. And this deal was worth 180 and he's getting it for 132. And that is the type of opportunity that, and he's going to go out there and raise $20 million, but he's got the investor database and the track record. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some amazing opportunities, and the people that are ready are going to get them.
What do you say to those people? Because we've had this kind of come up a handful of times. I mean, we're seeing deals falling apart left and right, obviously, because they went under contract prior to all of this. And if they haven't released contingencies, a lot of them are either backing out or retrading, renegotiating the deal. But there were a couple of people that we know, for example, clients that had already released contingencies, and they were like, what do we do? Because I know the building's lost value now. The seller's not going to negotiate with me. I don't want to go and arbitrate and fight over my deposit. What do I do? So we've gotten legal advice from some of our clients that were in that position, but I'm just curious kind of what your advice would be to somebody in that position, like a student of yours, for example. If they were in that position, what would you recommend?
Well, we've had several. So like we've had more than several. Okay. Prior to mid-March, my students were buying 5 to 6 deals a month on average. Okay. We already closed 12 deals this year before coronavirus, maybe 13. Wow. We did 62 deals last year in 2019. So that's just the people that I mentor. Okay. And there's probably many more that I've mentored in the past that I'm not even tracking. Okay. So we had about 10 deals that were under contract when this happened. So they signed, and, for people listening out there, they signed in January or February under those conditions, which were much more of a seller's market. Many of these deals have non-refundable earnest money, no contingencies for finance and things like that. And by the way, that's how things have been for the last 3 to 4 years. That became the new norm. Mm-hmm. But I could tell you from 2002 to 2015, that wasn't the norm, because I've been buying back then and I always had contingencies. Mm-hmm. But up in somewhere around 2015, it just shifted. And the reason I'm explaining this is I want your listeners to understand, like, there was a time when you could buy an apartment, 100-unit deal with a full due diligence contingency, a full loan contingency, which means you could tie up the deal for 60 days and basically walk away for $100. Right. If you find anything wrong, if you don't get the loan you want, or you could tie it up and try to renegotiate, which I never wanted to do anyway, because now you're risking your reputation. So even back then, if you were a retrader, you wouldn't get deals from brokers. Okay. But now we have these people that are caught, what I say, holding that hot potato, right? So what we've been doing is, I could tell you this, and I would say there was about 10 of my students that were under contract. 8 out of 10 have successfully renegotiated. Wow. They all didn't get the 10% concession they asked for. Okay. But they got something. And the reason is that the seller also knows that if they pull the deal, yeah, they can even get the non-refundable money. But now what are their options? Right. So it really comes down also to the seller's motivation. Most sellers are motivated to sell because they want to get their equity out of the deal, right? Some have to sell. So if you're in a deal with a seller that has to sell, they're going to be more agreeable to price concessions. But we've seen, like, here's some examples of concessions that we've seen. So lenders now are requiring, like Fannie and Freddie lenders are requiring borrowers to put up 12 months of principal and interest.
Yep.
So on a $10 million deal, that could be like 500 grand. So if you raised $3 million to close, all of a sudden you're $500,000 short because now you got to put 500,000 in a lender escrow that the lender controls until you meet certain performance metrics, and then they release the money. So we've had sellers offer to put up that money.
Wow.
So the sellers in some cases have said, hey, look, we'll put up the 500,000. It's not a price concession, but we'll put up the 500,000 because we understand that it's going to be hard for you right now to raise another $500,000. But obviously, once you hit the debt coverage ratios, then the lender gives us the money back because it's our money. So that's an example of some things that we've seen. We've seen $100,000, $200,000 price concessions. We've seen sellers putting up reserves. We've seen sellers, here's another creative one. Sellers have been guaranteeing, if you look at January, February, March income, which is called a T3, sellers have guaranteed for April, May, June, July, August, September, for the next 6 months, that the income will remain the same as January, February, March. And so what sellers are saying is, hey, we understand income's probably going to drop, but instead of us just giving you a concession now, we'll wait to see how bad it is, and we'll guarantee your
Fill the gap instead of, yeah.
So
Yeah.
like they're guaranteeing income. So this is just some examples. And again, in a few situations, we've had to have students walk from deals and lose their earnest money just because the impact was so severe and the seller wouldn't budge. And in that case, then you have to ask yourself, hey, is it worth pushing forward and doing the deal to the detriment of our investors in order to save our earnest money? And unless you get a concession in a lot of these deals, the answer is no. And so you have to walk. Now, the next comment is the whole legal thing, which if you walk and the seller has contractually the right to your earnest money, then the next question is, are you going to sign the earnest money release? And that's a whole other question where you need to talk about with your attorney, because you may be able to make some kind of case that, which jury is going to rule against a buyer right now so who knows? I'm not even going to go there, but
That's a messy, sticky situation. Yeah. Yeah.
Sellers know that even if they're contractually obligated to your earnest money, there could be a legal battle. They know. And so, again, most 8 out of 10 times there's going to be some negotiation that sellers are willing to do. Now, I also say for your listeners that if buyers just become unrealistic, and some of my students did this, like I do webinars with all my students, 300 or 400 people that tune in and 1,000 register, and 300 or 400 are tuning in every week. And one webinar, I said, look, you need to get a 10% discount. Well, a guy that was under contract took that general advice and made it a case specific advice. So again, I love podcasts and webinars and Bigger Pockets and blogs, but the thing I don't like about them is that it's general advice. Like everything I'm saying here is general advice. And if somebody takes that general comment and says, well, Brad Sumrok said I need a 10% discount, and they call the seller and say, if I don't need 10%, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right. Every deal is so different. And I get that too. It's like there's so many nuances with every deal. And that's part of why I love multifamily too, is that every deal you do with all the experience you have, there's always like little things that are new experiences. But yeah, it's not, you can't really give blanket advice with deals.
Yeah, and I could, but if it were that easy, I could just do, a 100-page Q&A and I don't need to do any mentoring, right?
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, so I kind of want to just shift a little bit. You talked about at the beginning. I just want people to so we're younger, and what we're preaching is, I've learned that, like I said, as I was telling Tom the other day, I said, Tom, what's funny is I had a pivotal moment in my life where Crystal and I have been together about 10 years, and I was doing tax returns for small or large real estate investors. I was doing their residential loan. I do residential. She does commercial financing, and I would see them and I would be like, how does this guy not pay tax? Like he owns a lot of this. And I told him, like, one time I called him up, he's a friend. I said, I really hate you. Like, what am I missing? He's like, you're not missing anything. You're not educated. You don't get it. Like, I'm like, so you don't pay tax? No. And one of the things I wanted to say, I know it's publicly on your website, but I know you make a lot of money cash flow. And I was listening to a podcast, and that's one of the reasons why I heard about the 100% bonus depreciation is I think one of the reasons you met Tom. But you also make income that's ordinary income. It's not passive. It's not from apartments. It's from your course and your trainings and what we just talked about. Like, so I wanted you to kind of just like, is that something during your course? Obviously, you're preaching and diving into people that it's not just zero income off this. You could make passive and pay zero. Can you kind of just explain like how you view that and how you basically push that into people, drive it in?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a big part because look, to me, there's many reasons to buy apartments, but let's just break down the financial reasons, right? You have cash flow, and everyone needs cash flow to live. You either get it from a job or from a business. You want to have a capital gain or some upside component, which again, to break it down in simple terms, it's you want to sell for more than what you buy, right? And there's strategies to do that, like with apartments, by raising the NOI and also not trying to time the market, but understanding it. So again, right now, I don't want to sell unless I have to, because I'm going to take a 10 or 20% haircut. So I'm not going to sell right now. But the third thing, I mean, of course, you have principal pay down and all that type of stuff, but the third main benefit is the tax savings. So it's a big part of my program, especially, and I have to say, up until 2016, it was a small part of my program because I was paying a lot of taxes. And I even, I shared with you, I said, I teach what I do. And that's how I start. It starts with me teaching what I do. And then the reverse is I do what I teach. So when I learned how to save 1.184 million in taxes by buying an apartment building, that became a critical part of my curriculum. So you're able to, and just so the listeners are clear on this, you are able to offset, you can offset income with depreciation loss in certain situations. And some of those situations are, you could offset passive income with that depreciation loss. But if you're a qualified real estate professional, and you could Google that definition, or, it's basically working 750 hours per year and material participating in real estate related activities. And that 750 hours is more than that you spend in any other activity, including like a job. Then you could be a qualified real estate professional. And so then your real estate active income could also be reduced by your depreciation loss. And I'm sure Tom Wheelwright maybe explained to you the other day, but even if you're not a real estate professional, if accountant can classify some of that, if you're an entrepreneur, he may be able to reclassify legally some of your earned income to be more of a passive income. And then you could offset some of your business income. So I know a lot of my students that Tom and other qualified accountants have helped take income they get from their business, and they could classify it differently. And then you could use that depreciation to offset it. So it's a big, big deal. And coronavirus or no coronavirus, that bonus depreciation that you could buy a building and accelerate it has not been impacted. So like for me personally, I need to buy a deal in 2020 or I'm going to pay $1 million in taxes. So I still have 1 million reasons to go out there and buy a deal. Of course, I want to find a 20% discount too, but yeah, it's a big piece of the pie. Big deal. So for people that want to learn how to legally reduce their taxes, again, I'm not bragging, but prior to depreciation, our total income from all sources was over $4 or $5 million. I'm going to pay zero, or maybe 100,000. Depending on if I could get a building that meets my criteria that it could offset that. I mean, maybe I'll pay 100,000, instead of 1.3 million. I mean, that's a pretty good number, but I'd like to keep it.
Yeah. And I mean, and this gives you the ability to just keep buying and buying at a more rapid pace, obviously. You know, you're
Yeah. and you got to keep in mind that bonus depreciation, which I'm sure Tom talked about, so I won't talk about it too much, but it's going away in 2023. So, and it might go away in 2020 if the Democrats win, and not to be political, but just like Trump unwound, the Paris Climate Accord, the Iran nuclear deal, it's possible that Democrats could unwind these tax laws that were pushed through from the Republican side, in 2018. So the time to get into apartments, and I know some people might think I'm crazy and all this Grant Cardone stuff, which is a lie, by the way. Grant isn't, I don't know if he's going bankrupt or not, but that video that, like, I know Grant and his people, and that video was a joke.
He's not, it's a complete joke.
Yeah.
And he was worried about, he wanted to get attention, and he got everybody's attention.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but it was a joke. Like and I did hear from other sources that maybe some of his deals are having issues, but a lot of deals might be having issues. As far as him selling deals for 10 cents on the dollar and selling his jet for $7 million, I mean, I think it was a joke, right? And they told me it was a joke because Grant has spoken at my events, and I reached out to them, and they said, yeah, it was a guy heckling them on Instagram Live, and he just kind of played along with it, like, yeah, everything is falling apart, and whatever. So, someone could watch this version of the podcast and have me saying, yeah, everything is falling apart, and whatever. But yeah, that's not me. Nothing's falling apart here with me. Everything's going great.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's funny. I saw another podcast with him. I don't know if you know who Billy Jean is. He's like a marketer guy. He called Grant. He said, Grant, I want to know the truth. And he said, I just looked you up. You've never been more searched on Google than now. And Grant's like, he's like, I know what you're doing. He's like, yep, you're a marketing genius. Good job. Everybody's talking about you, and your name's there than it was. So I know we got to wrap up because you have to get on another call. So Chris will always like to know this question. 5 years from now, we look out, we reprinted, God knows how much money we're going to print. We're going to make inflation, no inflation, apartments still an amazing, investment to have. What do you think?
Absolutely. This is what I did with all my $100 bills the other day. So, yeah, I think, look, and I don't want to sound the wrong way, but I've been doing this since 2002. I'll be doing it in 2025. I'll be doing it in 2030. Apartments are here for the long term. The best time to start was actually 5 years ago, but the second best time is now. There's going to be some amazing buy opportunities. The fundamentals, outside of the coronavirus, there was a shortage of housing, right? Employment we were all-time lows of unemployment. So, and there's a shortage of single family and multifamily housing. So especially in the B and C class, people aren't building B and C class product for working class families. It's here to stay. It's a hedge against inflation. The depreciation benefits haven't changed. Those could actually go away. So that's why I'm still out there and not just teaching it and telling people there are buying opportunities right now, and they're going to be a lot in the second half of 2020. So yeah, by all means, people that wait, if you wait a year from now, you're going to regret it.
What do you like, final words or tips? What's your kind of like top 3 to 5 things that you, when you're talking in front of people, that quickly that you kind of talk about and go over and buying multifamily property?
Yeah, like what I'm telling my students now is, like, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but like, you got to be practicing. So like, what I just did with all my students is I uploaded like 12 deals that someone already bought, but I uploaded all the financials, the offering packages up on our student portal so they could practice. Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the saw. So You know, a lot of states right now, we have safer at home or shelter in place. And what I'm saying is let's get smarter at home and practice your skills. That's one big thing right now. And for the public out there, again, not to be too promotional, but invest in your education, whether it's with me or somebody else, but get educated. You know, we're doing our first online event. I could tell you about that if it's okay. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing an online event May 2nd and 3rd. And they can just go to like bradsumrok.com, or actually the name of the event is Weekend 2 Wealth, the number 2. And, you know, our live events, we usually get 600 to 700 people 3 times a year. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything I teach in a live event and put it online. And I'm actually going to be in my suit and on a stage in a studio. So I'm not just going to be sitting in a chair at a desk. It's going to be like a real event where you got to block out a weekend of your time. And it's, you know, it's not like, don't watch it an hour at a time. You don't go to a Tony Robbins event and listen to Tony for an hour at a time. You immerse yourself in a 4-day event and experience the event. So that's the way to get the most out of whether it's mine or anyone else's, is block out the time and be there, and don't multitask, but be present in the event, play full out. And it's great because we've had people that are like, Brad, I've always wanted to come to your events, but for one reason or another, I couldn't make the dates, or I didn't want to travel to Dallas, but now you're doing this online event. So thank you for that opportunity. So that's what we're doing.
Super smart. I mean, this whole Zoom thing, and I think, you know, the fact that you have a brand and you've been doing this, I think it's going to magnify for you too. You'll probably have bigger years ahead just with your program and stuff. I think, like Crystal's saying, I think a lot of people that might be in different real estate sectors might be rethinking, you know, getting out and moving, commercial, industrial, retail. So where's the best place for people to find more information about you and what you do?
It's really simple. My website is bradsumrok.com. There's no C in my last name. So it's BRADSUMROK.com. So that's it, man. And or they could send us an email to support at bradsumrok.com if they want to talk to somebody, or, you know, ask about our program and which one is right for them. That's the best way to go.
Awesome. Well, totally appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, sharing your wisdom. We always love learning and talking real estate with anybody. So it's been an honor, and I wish you much success, and hopefully we get over this quarantine pretty soon.
Yeah.
Thanks
Well,
so
thank
much,
you
Brad.
so much. It's been a pleasure, and I love it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch, and then hopefully when maybe things change a little bit, we'll do this again to see where we're at in 6 months or 8 months. It'd be kind of funny to trying to turn it around, see where we're at.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Right. Thanks so
Brad.
much.
Have a good day.
Guys.
Okay, bye.